Hey, welcome to my running channel. My name is Nguyen, and if you're new to the channel, this channel I talk a lot about distance running, especially from half road marathon all the way to ultra trail 100 milers. Now this year I don't have any road marathons on my schedule, so pretty much all of my videos is going to be about ultra trail running, basically ultra races, training, races, nutrition, strategies, and tips. So today's topic I'm going to talk about is bonking, or lows, when you're hitting lows in a race or in training. And one of the reasons why is this past weekend I went to Table Rock and I did a long session on the mountains, up to Table Rock, then up to Pinnacle Mountain, and then up to Sassafras, back to Pinnacle, and then back to Table Rock. And I bonked. I bonked really bad, so I really want to tell you and share with you that even though I've been doing it for a while, I make mistakes and you learn from it, so hopefully my information will help you out. So why is bonking important, or lows? And the reason why that I want to discuss this is because in ultra trail races like 24 hours, 100 milers, 100K, 30-hour races or more, chances are you're gonna bonk along the way, or you're gonna hit lows along the way, and it might not be once, it might be twice or 3 times, but most of the time it's like you do hit your lows, the very low, once or twice in a 100-mile race, for example. And once you hit that low, how you handle it is gonna make or break your race. Well, here's some of the lows that you might run into in a race or in training. But most of the time I'm talking here is in the race and how you're gonna evaluate it. Number one is you might have some kind of injury. It might be severe, it might be nicks, it might be something that's just sore or pain, but you can still go on. Some you can't. So you really have to evaluate your injury. A lot of these races have medical teams, but some races don't. You know, most of these or all of these races, you sign a waiver that if anything happens, you know, you can't sue the race director or the race itself. So it's really up to you what you decide to do. But a lot of times, the more you race, the more you know your body, is it like a serious injury or not? Because if you have a injury that could be permanent, you don't want to go on. But if it's something that you had before and you know you can recover from it, depending on where the race is and what time is left, you might want to go for it. Those are all of decisions that you have to evaluate at the time in the race, and you decide to stop or go forward. Number 2 is muscle fatigue. A lot of time you are running too much, and by halftime, for example, you burn out, and all you can do is use other muscles. Like you might have to walk. You can walk, but you can't run, and that's what you have to decide. One of my races, that after 50 or 60 miles, my running muscles was completely gone, fatigue. I cannot control. I cannot jog or run it. I can only walk. So I had to walk the last 40 miles to finish the race. But before the race, I actually mentally, I told myself that if I can walk, if I can put one foot in front of another, I'm gonna do it until I finish the race or until the time is expired. And for that 100 miles that I did, even though it took me almost 40 hours, I did finish the race. Number 3, you've got an upset stomach. You're trying to eat food in your race and you can't get it in, and you throw it all up and you feel sick, and it's hard to go forward when you're feeling sick. A lot of times you have to just rest for a little bit or try different food to see if you can keep anything down, because if you can't keep any food down, there's no calories going to your body. Now you have your fat that's, you know, transitioning and converting, but it's a lot slower than getting food inside you and then using the energy right away. Number 4 is you just depleted your glycogen. On average, people have about 2,000 calories that they can actually use in if they're running, they're using a lot of the calories, because your body is actually processing and using the fat energy and the sugar energy at the same time. If you're doing low aerobic, you're using more of the fat, but if you're doing anaerobic or high aerobic, you're using more of the calories or the sugar. So the faster you go, it's like this, but the slower you go, then you use more of the fat but less of the carbs. But at the time, you're still eating food in. But if you're really out of energy, then you just need to rest up, get some food in you, and let it go in and let it stay and digest. and convert it to energy, and then you're gonna feel a lot better, wake up to continue onto your race. A lot of times when you're hitting lows, regardless of which one of these, you're gonna feel crappy, very negative, a lot of emotional thoughts that come in your head, a lot of angry sometimes because you're training so hard, and then something like this happens. And look, it's 100 miler, for example, you know, that's a long time, a long distance, so anything can happen. So there's some things that you cannot control, but there's some you can. If you can take anything away from this video, is when you are feeling really low in a point in a race, be patient with yourself, be calm, sit, think, relax, and just evaluate what is going on, what time you have left, what can you do, what kind of low is it. Because if you know you can control the low, chances are you can get out of it. Unless it's an injury and you know it's an injury and you want to stop it before it gets, you know, any permanent injury or any worse, then that's when you stop. But all the other ones, evaluate the situation and see what you can do to go on and go forward. A lot of times when you get in a low, you have all the negative thoughts and the emotion just rush in and you really want to quit at that time. But that's when you have to hold back and just be patient, evaluate, and then decide a little later. Maybe if you are feeling no energy or you're just really tired and you're just so cranky, you might just want to take a nap or just rest for like 45 minutes and decide when you're not too emotional at the time. Now I have 4 tips what I use, what I experienced the last 4 years that I think is very, very helpful. So hopefully it helps you out. Like I said earlier, number 1 is be patient. Be patient with yourself. Just reevaluate the situation, see where you're at, see is it an injury that you can't go anymore, or is it just fatigue, or you're just out of energy so you're feeling really negative. Be patient with yourself, give it time, and then decide later, especially if you have like 10 hours left or 15 hours left. You don't want to throw in the towel right away unless you know for sure that you want to stop the race or give up on the race. But a lot of times, after a certain amount of time, your body feels a lot better and you can actually get up, rebound, and continue with the race. Number 2 is having a really good, positive crew. A crew is really, really going to help you. That's a big difference when you're running a race like a 100 miler and you're doing it by yourself and you have to drop bags and you packaging, and it's really okay like the first 50 miles probably. But once you get to the later stage when you're hitting the fatigue, like just searching for a bag of food or gel, it can be irritating because you're so exhausted and so tired, and also you're there alone, and when you don't have a lot of energy or tired, you get really negative, right? So you have all these negative thoughts in. But if you have a good crew, a crew there to help you, you don't have to do all of that. And also they can encourage you to move on, to get you the stuff you need and get you out of the aid station. Without that, a lot of times we spend too much time at the aid station. So having a good crew to get you what you need and then go. Tip number 3, word is very, very powerful. And if you can think of a word or a phrase that you can use when you're in your low, that's really, really going to help. Ingrain that phrase into your mind. For example, one of the races that I did was a Yeti, and at mile, I believe, I can't remember exactly, but it was like mile 70 or so. I was feeling really, really low, and I didn't think I was gonna get the time that I wanted, which was sub 24 hours. Initially, I was gonna think about hitting sub 20, but I knew that was out of the window, and I was on the border of sub 24 hours, and I think I was gonna miss it, and I felt so bad, and I was feeling so low. Well, there was one runner that was coming with me, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I was like, I'm alright, but I'm not good. I think I'm gonna like take a break or something. And he said, you're on pace for 24 hours, and if you really want it, you can do it. And that was the phrase that I needed to hear at that exact moment, was if you want it, you can get it. And I knew that I was right on the border. If I really, really want it, I still can make this happen. And it got me going. It got me going. Yeah, I hit some lows along the way, but that phrase, if you want it, you can get it, gave me a spark to start from there to go forward. So you don't have to wait for somebody to give you a really good phrase to really motivate you to go forward when you're feeling really, really low. You might want to think of 1 or 2 phrases that would help you get up and move forward, because that's all you need when you're really down and there's nobody around. At least you can talk to yourself to get up. Another tip is, when you are running, either training or in a race, if you have a group to go with, that's going to help you a lot to motivate you to pull and go with a group. And if you're by yourself, a lot of times, you know, you can drag and lag behind. But if you have a group to go with, it's going to help you go forward, especially if that group is around your own pace and not going too fast or not going too slow. And that's going to be hard. But normally, after you start a race for like, you know, 20-30 miles, normally the person that is in that range that you see, you're going to see him going back and forth the whole time. So a lot of times, if you can work with them, that'd be great. Because my experience is, if you have somebody to pull you along for at least 10 miles or 15 miles, that's 10 or 15 miles you don't have to do by yourself. Alright, so this is my last tip, and one of the tips that I use a lot in an ultra race, like 100 milers or 30 hours or 40-hour race or whatever I'm doing, and I get to a low point where I pretty much deciding at that point to give up or not to give up, to stop the race or not to stop the race. And what I do is I ask myself a question, and the question is, 2 weeks from today or 3 weeks from today, when you're feeling good and you look back to this time, will you regret the decision? Everybody's going to answer that question differently, right? It's how much value did you put into this race? How much time did you train for this race? Or, you know, maybe you ran like 100 miles each week or each month, then maybe this race is not that big of a deal. So you probably won't regret it. But if you're training for like 4 months for this race and you got to this low point and you just feel crappy, but you can still move on forward if you want. Well, 2 weeks from now, when you look back, chances are you're gonna go, man, I should have done 1 more mile of these, or 1 more aid station, or 1 more loop. And I'm going to tell you, my experience is, it only takes like 1 extra mile or 1 extra step or 1 extra aid station, and it builds this momentum. And once you get that momentum, you actually keep on going forward and you feel a lot better, because you might feel crappy for 1 moment, but 30 minutes when you actually start doing stuff or you start moving and hitting aid stations, you start to feel better sometimes. So you don't really know, and you can't expect that it's going to feel like this for the rest of the race. Yeah, it might be painful to go forward, but a lot of times it does feel better when you keep up, when you're actually moving, going forward. And you know, you just have to take it like a step at a time, an aid station at a time, or a mile at a time. And if you think in small portion, a lot of times you're gonna cover like 20 miles and you didn't even think about it. So in my session on the weekend at mile 22 or around 20, I bonked really, really hard. I made a mistake not bringing enough nutrition. I had 2 hammer gels, 2 mini bars, 3 water bottles, and that wasn't enough. That I should have known, because if I run a road marathon, I would have at least 6 gels on me with like 6 electrolyte pills at least. But for this one, for some reason, I just didn't think I need all of that, because I thought I would be going a lot slower, so I don't need. But it was a big mistake, because I was climbing 8,000 feet of gain, and if you don't know, when you're climbing, you're using a lot of energy. The whole entire session, I burned 4,000 calories, but I only took in probably close to 400. So that's a big imbalance, and I knew what I was feeling towards the end, and I had my friend there, and he knew that I was bonking, because he ran a few weeks before and it happened the same thing. But then this time he packed up more nutrition. I should have known that. I should have packed more nutrition, but I took it for granted and I didn't. So next time when I go, I would bring more nutrition. It's always for ultra trail running. It's not like road running. You know, road running, you're going pretty fast and straightforward. It takes like 8-minute pace or 9-minute pace, and you can cover, you know, about 9 to 8 miles in an hour. In trail, depending on the terrain, depending on the elevation, you can go for hours and hours. It's always better to have more nutrition than have lesser than what you need, because you never know what's going to happen when you're in the mountain. And normally it takes longer than you expected. You know, if it's a technical trail, this trail was kind of technical, a certain location, certain places you can definitely walk and jog, but there's some that you can't really run. And this was my first real elevation workout or elevation gain since my injury in October of last year. So my body is probably not fit as I thought it was going to be. When it hit me, it hit me pretty hard. I was going very, very slow. I was like a zombie, kind of just maintain my balance but move forward. It was really, really cold, and I didn't want to stop, because if I stop I know I'm gonna get colder. But when I got to mile 22, I was just so out of it that I just sat down for a little bit on like a tree branch, like a big branch, and just breathe for a little bit before I can even walk again. And then after I walked for a little bit, I sat on like a big rock, granite, and sat there for like a few minutes, and then I was able to get up and walk again. I was totally pretty much out of it. At that moment I was thinking, oh man, it would take me so long just to get back to the trailhead, which is about 4.5 miles away. But slowly I was able to walk and warm up, and then as I was going towards like slightly downhill, I was able to start jogging and get my rhythm back a little bit. And then towards the end, when there was about half a mile left, my friend that was with me knew I was in trouble. He tried to finish his stuff because he was out of nutrition, and he brought me Coke and a banana, and that really helped. Something about Coke just gets you out of the low. Probably because there's so much sugar in there. Like, I don't drink soda, but when I drink soda, especially in the race, like Coke, when I'm that down, like after a little while I start to get my energy back. And I think it has a lot of sugar content in there. That's probably why it's flushing all the glucose back into your body, so you can actually use it for energy. So I really think that later on I would have like a small Coke bottle as a emergency food, so in the back of my backpack. I think that'd be a really wise or good idea. Now if you don't like Coke, you can have something else, but for me, Coke just works. And also I have Cokes in my drop bags for emergency as well. Yep, well that's all I have. I hope the information was helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up. If you want to follow along, subscribe to the channel and share it forward. I do want to hear from you, so please comment below. So what do you do to get up and get going again? Stay active, stay healthy, stay safe. Until next time.